Welcome to Harlots of SpookTalk. Tonight's episode covers the disturbing and tragic cases of Aileen Wuornos. This story includes discussion of murder, violence, trauma, and adult themes that may actually be upsetting for some listeners. This content is intended for mature audiences only and is presented for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I'm LD, and I'll be stepping back into the background as we begin. Karli will take you through the crimes, what happened, how it unfolded, and the darkness surrounding the case. Then Tiffany will walk us through the outcome, the courtroom proceedings, and what ultimately happened to Aileen Wuornos. This is a heavy story, and we encourage you to listen with care. Let's begin.
Is this any movie?
Welcome back to Harlots of SpookTalk. I'm your host, LD, and I'm going to give you the backstory of Aileen Wuornos. Now, you're going to get ready with me as I tell her backstory, because it's a lot. And what is this? Yes, I took my man's hoodie. If he wants it back, he's going to have to smell like me. So, get ready with me. Okay, so starting with the parents. The parents were teenagers when they had her. Her mother was 16 years old when she had Aileen, right? And this was on the February 29th, 1956. And we all know what sign that is. Pisces, I think. Anyways, so her dad also, his name was Leo Pittman. He was convicted child murder, who was later diagnosed with schizo, and he committed schmurishmide in prison. Her mother was Diane Wuornos. She again abandoned Aileen and Aileen's older brother Keith when they were about 4 years old, and this went on to the grandparents. Now, what's crazy about this is that the grandparents was like super abusive, and especially the grandfather. Like starting at age 4, anytime that she misbehaved, and I use that term very misbehaved, he had a sauna in his home, and he would throw her in the sauna and crank it up and just leave her in there. Like he would just make her stay in there, and so that kind of like fueled some hatred towards men, right? He was, not only that, he was like verbally abusive. He would tell her things like, oh, that you're worthless, nobody wants you, you're a mistake, yeah. Okay, so Aileen learned early to resort to money because at age 11, she was known for the cigarette bandit. She would trade sexual favors for cigarettes. Again, like a freaking age 11, she was trading this. And then she got pregnant at age 14, which was said to be, she was, by a family friend, and that's why she had to put her son up for adoption. But, the baby was immediately adopted and taken away from her. And so she just started to believe that she was actually worthless. And then her grandmother passed away because her drinking, and her, just to kind of go right through that. And the grandfather just blamed her for that. She, after them, lived pretty feral. She lived in a car, and nobody was there for her. She uses her body to get food, cigarettes, and all the necessities. And she believed all these terrible things that when she was growing up. She may do these things out of fear for her life, you know what I mean? So, if I didn't say it before, she would do all these terrible things, like out of fear for her life. And it's, she just spent her life in a cycle of like poverty, substance abuse, crime, drifting aimlessly through the country. So she actually moved, well, we'll get into that. But she was actually close to one person that was her brother, who was 11 months older than her. There was rumors of incest. There was incest and something unnatural, and these were the friends that say that they had witnessed these like unnatural things, between the two siblings. So she goes from Michigan to Colorado at age 16 because it's too cold. She can't survive the winter living in a car. And that was at age 16 for just the warmer weather. Then she got arrested for driving under the influence 2 years later when they found a 22 caliber weapon. And so in 1976, that was when she was set 20 years old, she went from Colorado to Florida. Very shortly after that, she gets to Florida and she marries a 69-year-old man. She gets very violent towards him just to kind of rush you through it, like hitting him with his cane. Lois, her husband, filed for annulment just weeks after they were married. And not like around this time, she gets some horrible news that her brother Keith passes away of cancer. She was devastated. She felt like she had an ally with him, but she did receive money from him. And she spends it on cars, weapons, and a place to live, like motels. But she needs to sustain this lifestyle that was created. So she goes and robs a store for $35 and a pack of cigarettes, and she spent a year in jail. Well, that just escalated it, and she was arrested for prostitution and battery. And that is the backstory before I go too deep into it. And we're going to have our other host get next.
Wuornos murdered 7 men within 12 months. All the men were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. First being Richard Mallory, age 51, electronic store owner in Clearwater. Date of his murder was November 30th, 1989. Wuornos claims that Mallory beat her and her. I can't say the full word, sorry guys. After he drove her to an abandoned area for certain services. Mallory was Wuornos' first victim, and she claimed to have offed him in self-defense. Later, it became known that Mallory had previously been convicted of attempted R in Maryland. So, there's that. His body was discovered December 13th, several miles in a wooded area. He had been several times, and 2 to the left lung were found to have been the cause of his demise. Second one is that we know of is David Andrew Spears, age 47, a construction worker in Winter Garden. He was declared missing as of May 19th, 1990. On June 1st, 1990, his body was found along US 19 in Citrus County. He had been 6 times with a .22 pistol. The third victim, Charles, age 40, part-time rodeo worker. Date of his was May 31st, 1990. On June 6, 1990, his body was found in Pasco County. He had been 9 times with a .22 caliber weapon. The body had been wrapped in an electric blanket and was badly decomposed. Witnesses saw Wuornos in possession of his car, and Wuornos had pawned a identifying belonging to Charles. Next victim was Peter, age 65, retired merchant. In June 1990, he left Jupiter, Florida for Arkansas. On July 4th, 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car, and Wuornos' handprint was found on the interior door handle. His body was never recovered. Next is Troy, age 50, sausage salesman from Ocala, Florida. On July 31st, 1990, he was reported missing. On July 4th, 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Route 19 in Marin County. He had been twice. Next up is Charles, age 56, retired U.S. Air Force major, former state child abuse investigator, and former chief of police. Date of September 11th, 1990. On September 12th, 1990, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed and had been 7 times in the head and torso. His car was then found in another county. Last, for what she was convicted of with these, is Walter, age 61, trucker, security guard, and reserve police officer. On November 19th, 1990, his nearly naked body was found near a remote lodging road in Dixie County. He had been 4 times. 5 days later, his car was found yet again in a different county. And this is her crimes that she was convicted of. Next up, I will hand it to Tiffany. Love y'all. Be safe.
Hey, I'm going to jump into the trial, arrest trials, you know. Um, so let's see. Oh, it goes on July 4th, 1990. Wuornos and Moore abandoned Peter's car after they were involved in a crash. Um, there was someone that witnessed the crash, providing police with a description of the 2 women, who later led to a media campaign to locate them. So police also found victims' belongings in pawn shops, and Wuornos' fingerprints were all over it. I mean, that. So she had a criminal record in Florida, and samples of her prints were in the the database already. On January 9th, Wuornos was arrested at the Last Resort Bikers Bar. So that one was because she had an outstanding warrant for carrying a concealed pew pew. So the police were already on her. She's well known in Florida. So they found, they found the Moore the next day in Pittston, Pennsylvania. So, and she, agreed to a confession in exchange for immunity, you know. So she returned with the police to Florida, where she was put up in a motel. Under police guidance, she made numerous telephone calls to Wuornos. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. Pleading for help in clearing her name. 3 days later, on January 16th, 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed that the men had tried to do things to her, and she killed them in self-defense. Well, in self-defense. In November 1991, she was legally adopted by a 44-year-old woman with whom she had no previous contact or relation. So this is just crazy. Goes into a little bit more about that. So she was convicted in 1992 of the Richard Charles Mallory. She went to trial for that. Then on January 27th, she was convicted of Mallory's murder with help from Moore's testimony. So she did testify against. Wow. I'm learning something new too. So at her sentencing, the psychiatrist for the defense testified that she was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Okay. So during the trial, new evidence. So the defense made efforts during the trial to introduce evidence that Mallory was previously convicted for attempted stuff in Maryland and served a sentence in maximum security correctional facility, providing remediation, for, yeah. Records obtained from the correctional institution showed that from 1958 to 1962, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation resulting from a criminal charge of assault with intent. Okay, so he was already a psychopath, but on March 31st, 1992, she pleaded no contest to the schmurders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene, and David Andrew Spears, saying she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she said, in part, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently do stuff to me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to." On May 15th, 1992, she was given 3 more schmurder sentences. In June 1992, she pleaded guilty to the schmurder of Charles Carskaden. Sorry if I said that wrong. In November 1992, she received her 5th schmurder sentence. So that's already 5. In February 1993, she pleaded guilty to the schmurder of Walter Antonio and was sentenced again. No charges were brought against her for the schmurder of Peter Abraham, so it's Peter Abraham Sims, as his body was never found. So in all, she received 6 months sentence for that one. It's just so much for this. Just bear with me. So she was telling very inconsistent stories about everything she did. She claimed initially that it was 7 men had did stuff to her while she was working as whatever, what she was doing. But later she recanted it and claimed it was self-defense. Yeah. Citing, robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses as the reason for murder. During an interview with documentarian Nick Broomfield, she thought the cameras were off. She told him that she told him it was in fact self-defense, but she could not stand being on, row where she had been for 10 years at that point. 10 years. So let's fast forward. She was in Florida at the Department of Corrections. And that's for, that's where they held the women that are on this row. And then she was transferred to the Florida State Prison for her sentencing. She tried to appeal it, and it was denied in 1996. In 2001, petitioned to the Florida Supreme Court. She stated her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals. So technically she was saying I did it. She robbed them as cold as ice, and she did it again if she had to. There's no chance in keeping her or anything because she would do it again, pretty much is what she's saying. So that was in 2002. Wuornos began accusing prison matrons of tainting her food with dirt, saliva, and other things. So let's move on. That's all prison stuff. She did a documentary, an interview. So let's see. So in her final on-camera words were, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my badonkadonk." Wuornos' execution took place on October 9th, 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and instead received a cup of coffee. And nowadays I see people trying to get it, like, these fancy meals for their last meals. Like, man, it had to be anything under $20. Give me some Big Macs or something. Let's see. I'm trying to wrap it up. And she was the second woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. Oh, yeah, that's just crazy. Like, all that leading up to, just, I don't know. Like, I think something was wrong with her mind up here, but anyways, that was all about, and that was really all about the trial. I'm sorry it took longer. I mean, there was a lot. She's definitely, I think, a psychopath. Yeah. Tell me your thoughts. And don't forget to catch us live on Thursday nights.